while. There really hasn't been news on boxing, unfortunately. This past Friday though was Xander Zayas. It's a big fight where he ended up winning and breaking the guy's nose. But other than that, there really hasn't been too much traction on boxing. But I will be getting back into it this week on this Friday. I will drop another video for you guys regarding that. But let's get into college football because that was the big shaker this week, week 3, the 4th week of college football that's gone on. So to start it off on Thursday, the only game that was on, well, not the only game that was on. There was a couple. Let me go to the FBS because I don't know why it's only giving me that version, but here it goes. So there was 2 games: Navy, Memphis, Miami, Bethune-Cookman. Miami looked amazing in that game. Obviously, they're versing a HBCU that unfortunately, doesn't have the resources like Miami does, but Miami did look good. Tyler Van Dyke looked good. They did end up getting a good win. Memphis beating Navy. Memphis was in trouble all game, and Navy is not a very good team, so I don't really know what to make of that other than this is going to maybe a longer season for Memphis if they can't do a better job of beating teams. Maryland, this is Friday. Maryland destroying Virginia. I didn't think they was going to be close anyways. I knew Talia Tagovailoa is an absolute unit, and I knew he would pretty much dominate the game. Army beating UTSA was pretty shocking until you find out UTSA didn't have Franco Harris. So to me, it was kind of like, okay, this is kind of expected. This is what was going to happen without their starting quarterback. But the backup played really good. And they had a really good team, too. So I did think it was actually a really well-placed game. And Army did a great job with their triple option and definitely doing enough to score and win the game. Utah Air Force, the score is very misleading because it was 14-39 entering the 4th quarter. It really was never close. Air Force absolutely dominated them, and they're looking good. 3-0. They're in the Mountain West. They're 1-0 in conference play after beating Utah State, who's also in the Mountain West. So hopefully they can continue building upon that success. Back to Saturday, South Carolina, Georgia. This game was really close. It was 14-3 at halftime. You were scared that Georgia might let this game down. Then in the 3rd quarter, those kind of fears kind of went away as it became 17-14 at the end of the 3rd, and then the 4th quarter they added another touchdown. But honestly, UGA's Dejon Edwards looked super good running the football. Carson Beck played up and down. He's not looking 100% in rhythm. The offense is still looking kind of up and down, where it has ebbs and flows, where it has dry spots for a long time, like they did in the 2nd quarter. I mean, the whole first half, really. So this is something that Mike Bobo really needs to get figured out. They need to get healthy. Their running backs, again, 2 of their running backs went down. They really need to find some way of staying healthy and putting together a cohesive unit, or they will not win another national title this year. South Carolina offensive line looked god-awful again. They looked good in the first half. Second half, they couldn't hold up. Spencer Rattler was running for his life, getting hit a million times, having to throw the ball a ton of times away. He started the game at 10-10. Absolutely stunning job at first, but South Carolina's offensive line couldn't hold up. And the defense played really well, though. So I'm really encouraged by South Carolina's defense. Not encouraged at all by their offense. I don't know how much more Spencer Rattler can take of getting hit without him getting hurt. South Carolina has major issues, and unfortunately for them, their season is going to end in probably 5-7, 6-6, even though Spencer Rattler is the best quarterback in the SEC by far, and I do think he will be a top 3-round quarterback. He's given me a complete 180 on his outlook, and I do believe he's actually a really good quarterback, and I think he's definitely proving that. Michigan looked terrible against Bowling Green. It was 14-6 at halftime. You were a little scared that, well, what's going on? Why are they having such a letdown against Bowling Green? Then in the 3rd quarter, they turned it all the way up to 31-6. Bowling Green never scored again. The defense of Michigan looked amazing once again. Offense looked god-awful. J.J. McCarthy was playing horrendous, 3 interceptions, only 2 touchdowns, 143 yards. Thank God they had Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum running the ball so well for them that ended up not being a big deal. Florida State and Boston College. This game was 31-17 or 16. I'm sorry, 31-16. Entering the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden, Florida State started turning the ball over. Jordan Travis started looking really bad, and Castellanos played really well, taking advantage of their turnovers and giving BC a chance to win the game. At the end, if it wasn't for a stupid penalty by one of the Boston College defensive players, they actually would have had the ball back with some time to try and get a field goal. And had they upset Florida State, that would have looked super bad for Florida State. Obviously, Jordan Travis needs to get back to playing the correct way. The running game was terrible for Florida State. Benson was not looking good. And I do think it was a formula Boston College showed of how to beat Florida State. Texas, Wyoming, such a bad game for Texas. I was unbelievably sad that Texas had even had to go through this. But this is the second week out of 3 where Texas has not looked good in a game. Quinn Ewers did not look good again, and he has this where he has a great game and a terrible game, and a great game and a terrible game. He doesn't stack on it. He doesn't go from great to great. He doesn't go even from a good to good. He either goes really high or really low. And any team that picks him in the NFL, I'd just be really scared. If he's worth it, because of the ebbs and flows of it, I would just be very terrified to choose Quinn Ewers as my quarterback for the future, without him understanding that he needs to stack them instead of going up and down so much. But let's see what Texas could do going forward. They are the favorites to win the Big 12. I do expect them to win the Big 12 as well, so we will see going forward how that works. Ohio State finally had the big game, 63-10. Typical Ohio State game versus non-con. Obviously a great look. They have Notre Dame coming up next week, so they needed to look good beforehand. Kyle McCord got into rhythm. Finally didn't have to look over his shoulder. Devin Brown, Trevor Henderson played really well. Marvin Harrison Jr. did his thing and then got the hell up out of there. He looked fantastic and like the number one receiver that we're expecting him to be, in a transcendent wide receiver. Penn State looked god-awful. Drew Allard was terrible throwing the football. They're really and they couldn't run the ball very well. So that was another thing that I was really shocked by for Penn State. If it wasn't for Luke Altmaier throwing 4 interceptions, I think Illinois actually would have won this game, because they would have had, Penn State probably wouldn't have had 2 less. They would have had 2 less touchdowns, and you're probably gonna have to give Illinois a touchdown here. So you're looking at a 20 to okay, let's say you cut 14, so 26-20 game. I mean 26-20. I'm sorry. If you cut, that's 20, then 4 more, that's 16. Sorry, 16-20 game. It really should have been Illinois won this game, and Luke Altmaier was god awful. He threw too many interceptions, and had he not thrown that many interceptions, like I said, Illinois wins that game big time. I think they would have won 20-16. And Penn State was looking really, really bad. Could they have gotten a field goal out of one of the other drives? Sure, yes. But I still believe Illinois would have ended up winning the game, either 20 or 21-17, and it would have been a huge upset against James Franklin. But James Franklin is not a coach is not accustomed. He's accustomed to losing one of these bad games for some reason. Washington dog walked Michigan State. Michael Penix looks like a Heisman Trophy winner along with the Dunze. Didn't really talk about there because Michigan State was god awful. Notre Dame got off to a slow start at first, 21-14. It was looking like they were really going to make it a game. Then it became 17-21. It was like, oh, okay, wow, this is really getting interesting. And then Notre Dame dog walked them from there. Sam Hartman continues to look amazing. He's 4-0. All 4 games, he's looked amazing. There's not been a single game where he has not looked good. Not a single game where the running game hasn't looked really good as well. So I'm really glad to see that this game between Ohio State and Notre Dame is definitely going to be the game of the week. And game day should 100% be there. Alabama and South Florida was the worst game I had ever seen. And I'm not even joking, dude. It was so bad. Look, USF's quarterback led both teams in passing yards, 87. 87. That is how bad Alabama's quarterback situation was Tyler Buckner was so bad in the beginning. I thought they should have taken him off the first quarter. Ty Simpson ended up finishing in the second half. He looked not good at all against any type of blitz. He was really good at when they weren't blitzing him, but when they were, he got sacked 4 times. So he's like a deer in headlights when anybody's running at him, and you can't do that because he'll end up getting himself killed, injured, fumbling the ball a lot. It's just not a good look. Alabama needs to go back to Jalen Milroe. They should have taken him out to begin with. I said they should have given Jalen Milroe the job from the very beginning because he honestly, to me, proved that he can play. The problem with that Texas game was you didn't play to strength. You weren't running with him. You weren't doing the ground and pound style from the very jump so that Texas wouldn't get to that lead. But you know what? I don't know what Nick Saban and Tommy Rees are going to do. Also, Nick Saban needs to fire Tommy Rees. And I'm being honest here, Tommy Rees is not a good OC at Alabama. The pressure has clearly got to him. He cannot coach these quarterbacks. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know the system. He doesn't know how it's supposed to look because clearly he just doesn't. He's just not that guy. And I was so wrong. So I thought this hire was going to be great. But going back to the old style of Alabama clearly isn't what's going to win you anymore. And I think Alabama sees that. And Nick Saban's realizing that. He's like, I can't do this. I think at the end of the season, he moves on from Tommy Rees. And they go forward with another OC. I believe they will find another spread offense type. I don't think they want to go back to the power. I think he wanted to, Nick Saban wanted to, and he was tired of the spread, but then he realized it's the only way to win nowadays, and that it's just going to have to be an adaptation that's going to have to be kept. Florida upsetting Tennessee was an amazing job by Florida. I was shocked that they beat Tennessee. I didn't expect Joe Milton to not be able to come back. I definitely thought they were going to come back. Once it was like 10 to 26, I was like, you know what? Maybe they could come back. Maybe they could give Florida a run, especially because Florida was looking god awful in the third quarter. Not Graham Mertz's fault. It's just both hands. I believe he split one of his hands open. The other hand, he injured very badly. So it just was really hard for him to throw and to get anything off. But Trevor Etienne was absolutely stunning. Montrell Johnson got hurt, but he wasn't good even when he was out there and was healthy. So unfortunately, that really kind of didn't do anything. I don't know. Joe Milton has these super highs, but he has these super lows that just I really don't understand. And I gotta think that Josh Heupel is confused as well. But I also think he's wondering, should he put Nico in at some point and give him at least a chance? And I don't know. I think he's going to ride Joe Milton for a little longer. I would personally. I just think I would talk to him and I'd say, hey, man, what could we do to get you consistent? And what can we do to get our offense running in the right way? Because that's really the biggest thing for them. Utah beating Weber State, that's not a conversation. Oregon beating Hawaii, not really a conversation, but it does set up Colorado and Oregon really nicely as two teams that are both 3-0. LSU, dog walk Mississippi State. I knew that was going to happen. I knew Mississippi State's corners were terrible. They were terrible previously, so I knew LSU would come out there and definitely get a win. Missouri upsetting Kansas State. This was the other upset that I couldn't believe. On a 61-yard field goal, they ended up winning the game on. What a great leg on that guy. But Brady Cook was phenomenal. Luther Burden was phenomenal as well, as Walker Howard tried and definitely battled really hard. Definitely an evenly squatted matchup, but just Missouri just did a great job of getting Brady Cook in good situations and putting him in comfortable situations to where he could thrive. Oregon State, San Diego State, the defense was smothering. DJU threw too many interceptions. I really didn't like that. The running game was really good. He threw the ball really well when he had to, but he still makes head-scratching decisions, and I don't know what to make of him. Haynes King looks phenomenal for Georgia Tech, but the defense was just so bad that it didn't even matter. Jackson Dart Quinton Jackson. Okay, I'll be the running back, and that's what he did. He didn't even throw that great, but he just ran the ball so well that it didn't matter. Um, Colorado avoiding an upset scare here against Colorado State, getting a good win. Love to see that they got the win, but Colorado wants to get dog walked by Oregon if they cannot fix their defense and if their offense keeps getting off to these slow starts. Because Oregon will put up 40 on you and a half if you cannot figure this out. And I think Dion knows that, and he is going to hammer that home all day to them because they have to go to Autzen Field at Oregon. So that's going to be an extremely tough pace to play. And we'll see how that game turns out. Oklahoma, Tulsa, nothing to talk about. Dylan Gabriel. And I said this before, I don't think Jackson Arnold should ever be considered because I think Dylan Gabriel is playing super well enough to where you can continue to rely on him being the starter, and that clearly was the case once again. North Carolina, Minnesota was never really close. Drake May had 414 yards, but he threw 2 interceptions. Drake May continues to be a turnover machine, and he needs to find a way to slow that down and understand that he can lose games like that. But North Carolina's defense is phenomenal, and they are playing really well right now. I really like North Carolina going forward. Duke, Riley Leonard, none to talk about. They're versing a terrible Northwestern team. Washington State, Cameron Ward was always going to be great against them. UCLA, Dante Moore. Honestly, the game was 59-7, but the reason why was because North Carolina Central just kept turning the ball over so many times. Really, UCLA didn't do nothing special, and you can see it in stats. Dante Moore only had 182 yards, 2 touchdowns. They ran the ball pretty well, but it really wasn't about UCLA's offense more than it was UCLA's defense that just kept making them turn the ball over on North Carolina Central. Iowa, 41. I knew they were going to put it on them, but what a terrible game by Cade McNamara. He needs to do a better job of throwing the football and finding ways to score through the air because in Big Ten play, they're going to get destroyed. That continues. Louisville barely beating Indiana. I thought Louisville actually looked really good in the beginning, in the first half, but in the second half just got shut out. And Indiana started the comeback, but honestly, at the end, they really just couldn't figure it out. At the end, Wisconsin beating Georgia Southern. There really was no matchup there. Mordecai still did not look good. I'm very concerned that Wisconsin's not going to be very good under Luke Fickell this year. Now, going forward, I do believe in that. Wake Forest, the fact that they came back in the second half, scored 27 after being down 17-0 at halftime, and then 24-0 at some point. It was really looking bad. Old Dominion was killing them. And then Wake Forest came back, and fought back. Credit to them for fighting back and getting the W there. Let's go to actual games. Mattered. Rutgers being 3-0 for the first time in a long time. Great job to them. Beating Virginia Tech in a game where I thought it was going to be way more evenly matched. Great job, like I said, by Rutgers. The head coach definitely turned that program around. I mean, the fact that they're even 3-0 was a phenomenal job, and having a great running game is a good start. UConn, my team, losing again. There was nothing really to talk about here. Our running game was amazing. Nothing else was great. I don't know what else to say. The quarterback situation is still not a good situation for us. Texas A&M, we knew was going to come back and win, especially against UL Monroe. But going forward, we will see how that looks going forward for them. California, great win against Idaho. Not really a great win, but a good win for California standards. Tulane beating Southern Miss. Good job. They didn't have Pratt again. They will have him next week, so we will see how that goes forward. Charlotte losing. UCF getting a huge win against Villanova. We knew that Villanova doesn't have a very good defense or a good team in general. So great job there with a backup quarterback in McLean. I thought McLean played so well that you could start him instead of John Ryan Plumlee. Even when he comes back, I'd make it a real competition there. So look out for that. Auburn looked really good rushing the football. Peyton Thorne continues to not look like the answer at quarterback with 2 interceptions, I guess especially against Samford, who doesn't have good secondary at all. Definitely something that you want to talk about if you're Hugh Freeze. But we'll see how that goes moving forward. Nebraska finally got a win against Northern Illinois. It was Northern Illinois. Should get a win. Harrisburg, which started there as Jeff Sims still continues to leave out with an injury. Do not put Sims back in. He's officially should be done and benched. Vanderbilt losing to UNLV is so sad because Vanderbilt shouldn't have even been in the situation where they would have lost. Swan played great football, I thought at times, but it was just UNLV somehow pulling it back out and getting the win. Just really bad. Cincinnati losing to Miami, Ohio is embarrassing. That should have never happened. Emory Jones, 2 interceptions were just another one of Emory Jones being Emory Jones again, despite the great rushing attack and despite Henderson having a great game. And then South Alabama dog walking Oklahoma State was probably the most embarrassing loss of the whole entire weekend. The fact that you lost, you're a Power 5 team losing to a team that's that bad in South Alabama, and you lost at home 33-7. Yeah. Oklahoma State with all those transfers that transferred out, I could see this team being the bottom of the Big 12 very easily. This was just straight embarrassment. And if I'm Oklahoma State, I will be looking to move on from Mike Gundy. Texas Tech 41-3, they finally get a win against a terrible team. SMU 69-0. Rice with their second win of the season, getting 59-7. Coastal Carolina 66-7. Arkansas State finally getting a win, 31-1, 31-7. Sorry, against Stony Brooks. James Madison continued to be undefeated, but now being 3-0, beating Troy. BYU upsetting Arkansas in a great game, honestly, to me. Awesome job for BYU and Keaton Slovis. He's looking really good in BYU, and I'm pretty proud of the way that they battled back and put a great game plan together. Kentucky beating Akron should be nothing new. Definitely looked really good. We'll see how that looks moving forward, especially against an upcoming game against Florida. Syracuse beating Purdue. I still don't think Purdue is there yet offensively, and they need to figure that out. Congrats for Syracuse being 3-0. It's been a long time, and I'm glad they got there. West Virginia. The head coach of West Virginia is probably super happy right now because the team's playing really, really well, rushing the football wise because they look terrible throwing it. And Phil Jerkovich led both teams in passing yards, and yet he only had 81, but he threw so many interceptions that it didn't even matter. Pittsburgh, man, they're falling on some hard times, and it's really looking tough for them moving forward, unfortunately. Stanford, again, losing to a terrible team in Sacramento State. I'm pretty concerned for Stanford, and I'm thinking that, wow, you really are going to need Elijah Brown. But I feel bad for Elijah Brown. If he goes there, it's not going to look good. And like I said, I just feel really bad moving forward for Stanford. Clemson, 48-14. The defense was lights out. Kid Klubnik did not really play that well, to be honest. The rushing game was terrible again by Clemson. I don't know what to say other than Clemson is just going to be in lots of trouble. Like, the score is very misleading. FAU is super bad under Tom Herman right now, but this is Tom Herman's first year, so I'm not really expecting much. But, man, it is going to be really hard to see Clemson knocking off anybody. It just really is. I really have a hard time seeing that. TCU, I knew they would bounce back, get a nice win against Houston. They did, and honestly, I don't think Dana Holgorsen is going to last there at Houston whatsoever. Texas State beating Jackson State. Jackson State, it's interesting because had Deion been there with all those guys, I do think they would win a lot of these games, but I don't even know if they would beat Texas State with the way Texas State schemes things open and just is able to pile it on to you. Yeah, it's just interesting that Jackson State's playing a whole lot of Power 5 all of a sudden, or not Power 5, playing a whole bunch of Group of 5 teams where Deion wasn't doing that. He kept saying, no, take them out, we're not ready. We need only be playing these teams so we can eventually get to that point. And definitely seems like Jackson State is not going to be the same that they used to be. Fresno State beating Arizona State without Jin Rashada. I knew that would happen. Mikey Keene looked super good. Really nice that he gets Fresno State to 3-0. And it's going to make them a really tough out going forward. And Arizona State looked abysmal. They were going to anyways. I predicted they would go to be like that because of who they have without Jin Rashada. So It is what it is. Kansas barely beating Nevada is so sad. The offense played great. The defense was bad for Kansas, and Lance Leipold understands that. And I'm wondering if he's going to take that Michigan State job because I think that'd be a nice step up for him to finally get somewhere where he can actually win some games and expect 8 to 10 wins a season instead of barely making a bowl game is the standard. So I wonder just to see how that moves moving forward. Arizona beating UTEP. Nothing to really talk about there. I expected Arizona to do so. They have a pretty decent quarterback, and their team is on the up and up, and they're 2-1 now. So that was it for week 3. Week 4 matchups to look forward to here. There's only, in my opinion, a couple. Florida, Clemson, obviously a big one. It kicks off the day. I think that will be a big one. Michigan and Rutgers, honestly, is going to be very interesting because the rushing attack by Rutgers is so good that you wonder, could they make it interesting with Michigan? I don't think they'll beat Michigan, but could they make it interesting? Oklahoma Cincinnati will not be close. Army and Syracuse will be close. I do think that triple option could be very dangerous going against Syracuse. Auburn, Texas A&M, a great game to start off as well. I love that matchup to see can Texas A&M rebound and beat Auburn, who's 3-0, hasn't really versed tough competition, so we will see how that goes moving forward. I do have Texas A&M winning that game, but barely. SMU, TCU, great game of two Dallas-Fort Worth area. Dallas-Fort Worth area is right next to each other, so both these schools represent each side, with TCU representing the Dallas side, where SMU is the more Fort Worth side. So it's going to be really interesting to see that game. I'm really excited to see how that game goes on. Ole Miss, Alabama is going to be super intriguing because who they going to start at quarterback, and can Ole Miss pull off the upset and Lane Kiffin finally beat Alabama, his former mentor. UCLA, Utah, phenomenal game. I think this game will absolutely do numbers if it is, portrayed the right way. And I do think with Cam Rising being back for Utah, it could be very interesting to see if he has any rust or anything like that, and if Dante Moore, as a freshman, can pull off the upset against the Utes. Like I mentioned earlier, Colorado, Oregon, phenomenal game. I am so happy to see this game, to see what could happen here. It's going to be in Eugene and Autzen Stadium. I'm not going to predict who wins that game, but it's going to be pretty interesting to see who will win that game. Maryland, Michigan State, don't think that will be much of a game. BYU and Kansas is going to be an amazing game. I do see that game being interesting with BYU potentially pulling it off against Kansas, or Kansas pulling it off against BYU. We will see, but it is going to be a hell of a game, and I think it's going to be a game that's going to be put on the map. Louisville and Boston College got interesting because of obviously what they almost did to Florida State, and I think they could pull it off against Louisville. Am I predicting it? Not right now, but if Plummer decides to turn the ball over, Boston College will certainly take advantage, and they will upset Louisville. Texas Tech, West Virginia. I'm going with Texas Tech on this one. I think they're going to beat them, not by much, but I do think they will get a nice win here. UTSA, Tennessee's not going to be an easy game, but I do think Tennessee will beat UTSA. I do think they get their swagger back a little bit. Sorry, I'm trying to find the other good game. And here are the other two that I was looking for. Ohio State, Notre Dame, great, awesome game. I can't even tell you who's going to win. I don't know. It's going to be packed in Notre Dame Stadium. And Ohio State is going to be coming in against Sam Hartman, who is, I believe, leading the nation in passing yards and in touchdowns. He has 1,061 yards already and 13 touchdowns. And he's played 4 games. Ohio State has only played 3, but I think it's going to be super interesting to see. It is going to be rainy, so it is going to be, elements are going to play a part in this game. Iowa, Penn State, phenomenal matchup. Iowa's defense versus Penn State's offense. Drew Allar looked really bad last game. If Iowa can keep it close and keep Drew Allar from making any big plays and stop the rushing attack that has not been good for Penn State this season, I think Iowa will pull it off and win this game. I'm actually going to put Penn State on upset alert, and I'm going to go with Iowa winning it very, very close. I think Missouri will beat Memphis barely. I think that game will be a trap game for Missouri. UCF, Kansas State, an amazing game. I don't even know who's going to win that game. I don't know if Kansas State can come back. Depends. Does John Ryan's Plumlee come back? I don't even think that matters too much because I think the backup is just as good. So, but we will see here going forward. North Carolina will dog walk Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be pretty evident. USC will dog walk Arizona State. Cal Washington could be a little interesting, but I do think Michael Penix will run the score up on them. I believe it will be 42 to about 14. That game will not be very close. So that's it for next week. Make sure to stay tuned, and I will see you guys in the next one.